My next guest is Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Conservation and Forestry. During her time in Congress, she's worked to lower greenhouse gas emissions, protect clean air, water, support sustainable agriculture. Congresswoman Spanberger, it's great to see you again. Thank you for joining us. Look, we've been talking about lots of stuff the last 2 days. We're sort of like in mile 21 of a 26-mile marathon, as I tell people, a lot of topics. We have not discussed farmlands. We have not discussed, except in a little bit in the last conversation, forestry and the broader dimensions of, water, renewable resources, climate. So I know this is a recent obsession of yours. Can you tell us where sustainability and farmers and all of this cross over?
So I was really just delighted to listen to your conversation with Dr. Sanjayan, and I think that our conversation is really a pretty good follow-up to what the things that you were discussing with him. He was talking about the path of bringing industry and business leaders into the conversation related to environmentalism, and I'm focused on ensuring that farmers and producers are in that conversation. And there's so much that we can do. Dr. Sanjayan mentioned, securing the coastline and how if we allow for the natural infrastructure to grow and strengthen, that's, as valuable, if not significantly more valuable than building a seawall. And so, I would give the example of the Chesapeake Bay area. Virginia and our neighboring states have undertaken significant efforts to strengthen the health of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And the value has been there from an economic standpoint, and it has been there certainly from an environmental standpoint. And I think it's a good example that when we bring good conservation practices to a region, we can have real impact. And in bringing farmers and producers to the discussion, they have a particular expertise. Keeping land healthy, ensuring the strength and the output of crops and the health of livestock is imperative for them. And certainly ensuring that they have the tools and the ability to enter a voluntary carbon market is an important priority and legislatively something that I've been working on.
Can I ask you a little bit of left curveball question? I love your comments about the Chesapeake Bay. I happen to live out in the eastern shore of Maryland. You're in Virginia, but I agree with you that it's very important. But I have to say, from my experience, I do feel there's a little bit of a tilt more towards people who worry about water quality, who worry about wildlife in the area, worry about stewardship, but that it's not as robust as I would like to see. And I can tell in the way I see people litter. I mean, I know that may sound odd, but I get out on weekends with groups and go pick up trash with folks and things. But I'm just wondering, do you feel that our messaging is right somehow across different communities, particularly rural communities, into making them stakeholders or feeling like they're stakeholders in this equation, as opposed to having something done to them that they have to abide by? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And what you're talking about, that that making people stakeholders and giving people a role or the option to have a role is exactly that next step. And frankly, what we're working on. So I mentioned briefly, we have a bill called the Growing Climate Solutions Act, right, which allows for farmers and livestock producers to be part of a solution, part of a carbon marketplace if they choose to. So what the legislation would do, it would provide technical assistance to farmers who want to enroll in the carbon marketplace, support their ongoing efforts related to carbon sequestration or grassland management, right? And so both of these things are the grassland management, that's really valuable to a farmer or producer, support their efforts related to on-site energy generation. That's valuable to the operation and their resiliency overall. And our bill would set up a certification program at USDA that would identify trusted outside experts for those farmers to work with directly and help them through the carbon credit process, and really help jumpstart some climate smart projects on their farms or ranches. And the value here is that carbon markets, for farmers who choose to engage in them, really create an opportunity for them to have additional revenue streams. Certainly with uncertainty like we've seen from a global pandemic, with extreme weather, for farmers to have new market opportunities is frankly now more important than ever. This is a piece of legislation I introduced last Congress. We'll be reintroducing it soon. I partnered with on this bill with Congressman Don Bacon from Nebraska. And really, it is that next step where farmers who want to engage in carbon markets but need a trusted partner, USDA certified way to do it. That's what this bill seeks to do. So to take that next step where they get to engage on their own terms if they choose to, but who would want to walk away from additional revenue stream and frankly practices that improve output.
So I'm going to actually talk to someone about this tonight. Say the name of the program again, carbon, the name of the bill?
Well, our bill is called the Growing Climate Solutions Act.
Okay, Growing Climate Solutions. Well,
yeah.
Great.
And we have really broad support. We've got farm groups like American Soybean Association, National Corn Growers. We've got conservation folks like the National Audubon Society, Environmental Defense Fund. And then we've got food industry, as Dr. Sanjayan was talking about. We've got folks from McDonald's to Ocean Spray who are supporting this bill because it's a pretty straightforward way to engage farmers on a voluntary solution, and a voluntary program that is good for the environment and frankly good for their farming practices.
Let me ask you, one of the other dimensions come up a lot yesterday where we had people that had been working with some of the largest firms in America looking at ESG investing, looking at private equity, which is, has quadrupled the amount of money that it is putting into, say, renewables, et cetera. Is there a bridge between some of your objectives of what you're doing with farmlands and forestries and others with those that have huge capital in the investment world to kind of connect that, or is this still a kind of undeveloped terrain?
Well, I think the answer is sort of, right?
Okay.
So for me, the priority is for our local farmers, throughout the 7th District of Virginia or across the country to give them the autonomy and the ability to employ these practices that are good for their output, that are good for their soil health, that in fact are also good for the environment, that they have access to conservation programs and conservation funding. The programs exist within USDA, within the conservation title of the Farm Bill, to give farmers support and the financial tools to be able to enter particular programs and put hoop houses on their farm so that they can be more resilient if it's too rainy or if it's too dry, or in some cases, like in my district, when you have both in one growing season. And so allowing the farmers to take action through voluntary programs that they want to take is frankly my priority in the place where I'm looking. But for outside investment interests that might want to partner, certainly in certain parts of Virginia, and this is not so much in my district, but in certain parts of Virginia, we do have farmers who are choosing to put larger style solar fields in their fields where their animals graze. And so, the possibility that if a rancher has additional land and wants to utilize it for investors who want to come in, that's a possibility that may exist. But really where I'm focused is the autonomy that our farmers and producers can have to employ practices that are not just good for the earth, but in fact also good for them, good for the food that they're producing, or the good for their outputs, and help them become more resilient, particularly as we continue to experience.
I really would love to just tour around your district and find all the kind of cool groups you're working with. I know Virginia is actually way ahead of Maryland in the Chesapeake with things like promoting oyster bed cultivation, with farming, which is another element of farming out there that has to do with, water health and the health of the shed. But it's something I've become a little obsessed with, and I just really appreciate the work you're doing. So thank you so much, Abigail Spanberger, Congresswoman, Chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Conservation and Forestry and the Committee on Agriculture. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please come back and let me wonk out more with you on this stuff.
I would love to. I got another bill, the Climate Stewardship Act, I'd love to talk to you about. It would do a whole host of things, improving fertilizer efficiency, planting tens of millions of acres of new cover crops, enrolling 40 million acres of environmentally sensitive land in conservation reserve programs, all the good stuff. So I'm happy to talk about it in the future. But thank you so much for your time today. And thank you.
My pleasure. You come back and talk about, is that the one you're doing with Corey? Booker?
Yeah, that's the one that I'm doing with Cory Booker.
I love
yeah,
Cory, so
that's
we'll
a
have you both back.
bicameral bill.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.